They may not be the fastest animals on the planet, but snails are amazing creatures in the natural world. Let's get to know them better. You can find snails everywhere around the world. A snail has a very simple structure, the body and the shell. The body is soft with a viscous texture. On the snail's back there is a visceral hump which contains vital internal organs. It is enveloped in a protective tissue layer called the mantle. The snail's body has two main parts, the head and the foot. As you can see, this foot is not what you might imagine when you hear the word. Snails do not have any bones in their large foot. It is thick and muscular. The foot produces a wave-shaped movement by muscular contractions that make the snail glide. This is a distinctive feature of these animals. That's why snails are known as gastropods, which means stomach foot. But not all snails crawl. There is a kind of snail that gets about in a manner that looks like walking. It's very small, and its foot is also small and has a round sole. But the head looks like a thick, long trunk. At first, it leans on this trunk, then pulls up the foot, then leans on the trunk again. And that's the way it walks. Do snails have backbones? No. Snails are invertebrates, which means they do not have a backbone. They hide inside their shells at the first sign of danger. If snails had a backbone, it would be difficult for them to retract into their shell. The snail's shell is crucial for its survival. It is made up of calcium carbonate, which makes it strong. This structure protects the snail from predators and from getting damaged by any sharp objects in its surroundings. In addition, the shell helps the snail retain moisture and prevents it from drying. Snails that live in dry areas tend to have thicker shells, so they can stay sealed longer without drying out. And snails that live in wetter climates tend to have thinner shells because moisture retention is not a big problem for them. They literally carry their house around with them everywhere they go. The shell is attached to the body by strong muscles, so they cannot discard it. Baby snails are born with their shells, though these shells do not look like the shells of mature snails. The shell of a baby snail is soft and transparent. It is very fragile. And newborn snails need to consume a lot of calcium after they hatch. They often do this by eating the outer layer of the eggs they hatch from, which are rich in calcium. By the way, these creatures do not live very long in the wild. The life expectancy of snails is about 3 to 7 years. Most species of snails have a tongue in their mouth. Their tongue is not the same as the human tongue. They have a tongue-like structure known as the radula. The radula has rows of tiny teeth on it. This is what this toothy tongue looks like under a microscope. Therefore, the radula is used to scrape or rasp food particles, breaking them down into pieces manageable for the snail's digestive system. Snails are the largest group of gastropods. More than 100,000 species are known. Can you imagine? They can be conveniently divided into 3 groups. Those which breathe air and live on dry land, freshwater dwellers, and lastly, those confined to the sea. Let us examine these groups one by one. Land snails can live anywhere, but they need moisture to survive. That's why most land snails prefer to live in a warm and humid environment. Since land snails need to stay moist in order to survive, they're usually most active at night or when it is cloudy or rainy. Most of them are herbivores, eating vegetation such as leaves, stems, and flowers. Land snails keep a low profile, camouflaging themselves in dull shades of white, grey, and brown, but some species are bright. They may have striped and even transparent shells. It depends on the habitat of the given snail, because shell coloration provides partial protection against predators. Land snails range greatly in size. The shell of the world's smallest snail species fits in the eye of a needle. And the largest is the giant African land snail, a species widespread in Africa. It grows up to 38 centimeters and weighs 1 kilogram. It's like an empty school bag. Do you know where the snail's eyes are? Very often in cartoons, the eyes of a snail are depicted incorrectly. Snails have thin projections on their heads. The front of the head is decorated with 2 pairs of horns, a long pair and a short pair. These eye stalks can stretch from the snail's bodies and retract again. The snail's eyes are on the longer upper pair of tentacles. Take a closer look. They have light-sensitive eye spots on the ends. For snails, though, the view is limited because they are unable to focus. They don't see the moss they crawl on or the plants they climb. They see neither trees nor stars. Their eyes see mainly light and dark. The snails are deaf, since they have neither ears nor ear canals, so they do not hear neither the singing of birds nor the howling of wolves. Snails see the world mostly through smell, but also taste and touch. The pair of lower tentacles are short, and they are the snail's olfactory organs, which function like noses because they smell and taste the air. The lower tentacles also help to find food on the ground. These body parts are so critical to survival that they can regenerate if damaged. Land snails need only 1 lung for breathing. The stream of air which the snail breathes in passes through a small opening which functions like a nostril. If you look closely, you can see it under the shell. While moving, snails leave a trail of slime behind. Slime is another thing critical to survival. It protects snails from drying out and provides them with a roadway in which to slide. The foot mucus also has some of the qualities of glue, allowing land snails to crawl upside down and up vertical surfaces, such as the glass of their tank, as well as walls and tree trunks, for example. Snails may also estivate in the summer in drought conditions. They look for a suitable hiding place and fall into a state of dormancy. They also close off the entrance to the shell with a seal made of slime, which retains moisture but has a tiny hole for air exchange. During this time, metabolism slows and the snails can stay inactive for a long time. In areas where it gets frosty and where temperatures drop to sub-zero values, snails will hibernate during winter. These invertebrates climb the bark of trees without falling off and breaking their shell. Thanks to its slime, a snail can avoid being hurt by thorns or sharp stones. This slime even helps them move along knife blades without cutting themselves. Now let's learn about the second group. These are marine snails. The sea is the real kingdom of snails. Most of them just lie at the bottom. Others bury themselves in the sand and mud. Some species are usually found on a sandy ocean floor near sea anemones, which serve as a food source for them. Other snails live on coral reefs, where they can hide from predators. The cowrie snails are well known to shell collectors for their attractive shells. It is unusual to find mollusks coexisting with living coral. One exception, the wrapper snail, lives in colonies deep within the spongy Pacific coral reef. There are many species of limpets in the sea. The edges of the shell are sharp and hard, and over time a hole forms in the stone. And some snails stopped crawling altogether. They don't even look like snails anymore, and so are called the worm snails. Tiny sea butterflies live in the oceans around Antarctica. Sea butterflies don't paddle like most small water animals. Instead, their foot has taken the form of two wing-like lobes which propel the animal through the water by slow flapping movements. Other winged snails live in warm seas. They do not look like snails at all, but rather resemble some strange fish. But these are still snails. They have a tiny shell on their back, with the foot evolved into a fin. Aquatic species of gastropods exhibit a great diversity in shape. Some shells are covered with sharp thorns for protection against predators. The shell of this snail has wide leaf-like thorns which can serve as defense against crushing predators like crabs. These flat coiled shells have a sunburst pattern to prevent them from sinking through the soft ooze at the ocean floor. By the way, the largest sea snail is the Australian trumpet. It is a species of an extremely large sea snail, measuring up to 91 centimeters in length and weighing up to 18 kilograms. A cat or a small dog can easily fit inside the shell. Aquatic snails usually have only one pair of tentacles, with the eyes found at the base. As for breathing, almost every marine species uses gills for it. Some species are ravenous predators. For example, the wrapper whelk. It is a voracious and active predator, mostly feeding on bivalve mollusks. It smothers its prey by wrapping around the hinged region of the shell and feeding through the opened valve. Another predatory snail is the harper. It has a long siphon, a large mouth, and a very big foot in proportion to its shell, which it uses to hunt its prey. Cone snails are among the most venomous creatures on Earth. Once prey is located, the snail closes in, extending its proboscis towards the prey. The proboscis carries within it a harpoon. When the end of the proboscis touches the prey, the harpoon shoots into the victim and venom is injected. The snail retracts the proboscis, pulling back the dying prey, which is then eaten. Finally, the last group of snails are freshwater dwellers. They are found throughout the world in various habitats, ranging from smallest springs to largest lakes. The common pond snail has only one pair of tentacles with the eyes at the base. Freshwater snails cannot swim. Instead, they crawl near aquatic plants, submerged branches, and other substrates. The snail is certainly incredibly slow. Its slowness is another feature that has made it famous, and some people have managed to come up with something for amusement. For example, in many places in the UK, snail racing is organized. Can you imagine waiting for them to reach the finish line? It does not take as long as it may seem, though. Do you know that people have been using snail shells since ancient times? The cowrie shells were amongst the early man's most treasured possessions. They circulated as currency in more places in the world than any coin. Around the world, conch shells have served as musical instruments. Even in Greek mythology, the sea god Triton stilled the waves with his conch shell trumpet. The murex snails secrete a purple substance that was prized in ancient times as a dye. Extracting the dye was a laborious and time-consuming activity that involved treatment of tens of thousands of snails. Roman emperors had their new robes dyed purple as a sign of wealth. Many people think that snails are primarily pests of seedlings and herbaceous plants. So why do we need snails in the natural world? They are a very important part of the ecosystem. They act as a source of food to other animals, including mammals, birds, reptiles, and insects. They can also help clean up the environment by consuming rotting vegetation and certain types of fungi. Last but not least, snails are becoming increasingly popular as pets.